For 11 months of the year, Kiki happily does a Disney podcast with her good friend Tuesday. But for 1 month...
Ho, 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 no.
It's a holiday extravaganza! Happy holidays, Kiki! Yeah, it's still the holidays. We're still getting stuff. And we do have a bit of news before we get into the main thing here. And this is breaking as it broke.
And it is breaking holiday news, too.
Yeah, breaking holiday news.
We're on topic.
Yeah, a recent interview with the BBC from Brian Henson has revealed that an upcoming 4K release of The Muppet Christmas Carol is coming. We don't know when. It'll probably be around this time next year, I assume, for the holiday. But the big...
Well, I don't know how long they've been working on it. I don't know if they're just starting work on it now or they're just releasing the news now, but who knows? We may get it
might be for the
year.
30th anniversary, since that'll probably be coming up in about a year or so from now.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. Muppet Christmas Carol 4K release coming, and the big breaking news that Brian Henson made was that someone in the Disney archives found the original negative for the cut song When Love Is Gone. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there's a song that was cut in the movie where Belle, Scrooge's girlfriend, has a big song about how their love was great, and now it's not. And, you know, it's her goodbye song. I'm leaving you forever because of you being an a-hole. You know the story of Scrooge. If you had the VHS copy of this as a kid like I did, you're wondering, what are you talking about? The song is there. If you had the first release DVD, the song is also there. But it's only available in the TV format, the old, what they used to call full screen. It was never available in widescreen, because it was cut from the theatrical version pretty much days before it went to theaters. Thank you, Katzenberg, for that.
I thought it was Eisner.
I always heard it was
that made the
Katzenberg.
decision.
I always heard it was Katzenberg. Could be either Katzenberg or Eisner. I always go because Katzenberg was the one that really wanted Part of Your World cut out of Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that he would want a slow song cut out of a movie. Anyway, yeah, if you saw this movie in theaters, you didn't see that song. If you saw this on the widescreen DVD or Blu-ray, that song is not there. At least it's not in the movie. And, yeah, they're restoring it. They're putting that song back into the movie. Brian Henson has also said that he's not sure if they will update the Disney Plus version of the film to have it, although that hasn't stopped people from running with that Disney is updating the Disney Plus version. Despite what everyone's saying, we don't know that because Brian Henson doesn't know that. But hopefully they will, but they probably won't because they want you to buy the 4K Blu-ray.
Yeah, you were right. It was Katzenberg. He thought the song was too sophisticated emotionally for children. Whatever, dude.
My personal opinion is that song is necessary for that scene, for you really to feel Scrooge's guilt and regret for choosing money over love. At least to me.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
It's a good song. I never quite understood why it was cut.
So yeah,
but
that song will be...
Studio execs are weird.
Yeah, that song will be reinserted into the movie, fully restored, the entire movie at 4K quality, and hopefully it'll be out within a year or two, and likely for the 30th anniversary. That's my guess. So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm happy for it because every time I see this movie on streaming or on Netflix or something, I will always stop the movie and watch the When Love Is Gone scene on YouTube or something, and then back to the movie because I believe that song should be there. And I'm happy that it's going to be back there.
Yeah, like I said, it was a good song. I never knew why it was cut. I'm looking forward to the film being the way it was originally meant to be. And according to the interview, they made the deal that it would be cut from the theatrical release and then redone for all the subsequent releases, for television and for home video and stuff. And then it seems the negative got lost, and so it wasn't able to really be properly done. So glad they found it.
So yeah, it's part of an interview that for the BBC called Muppets at Christmas, It's Time to Play the Music, which will be on BBC Radio 2 on Christmas Day. Speaking of 90s Christmas movies, let's go on to what we're talking about this week, Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin, the movie that made him a star.
Yeah, the movie that made Macaulay Culkin completely impossible to get away from for like 10 years.
Yeah. At least until
Not that was a bad thing. I never had any hate on the kid, you know.
No,
I mean, I say kid, he's like our age, but
yeah, but you know, not just Home Alone, but you had the child or the son. What was that movie he was in?
The good son.
The Good Son. Yeah, thank you. That's the one I was looking for.
And of course, if you were a millennial girl, then of course you had to know him from My Girl.
Yeah. And Richie Rich. Then it was kind of downhill after that.
Yeah. But you know, he's done some cool things in his adulthood.
He's made a bit of a comeback in the last few years.
Yeah, and also he's kind of he's really taken to the internet well. He's hooked up with like Red Letter Media, Angry Video Game Nerd.
Yeah.
He was just a guest on the Some More News movie. If you saw that one, but that was kind of interesting. Started a band. Yeah. He's doing good for himself.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Home Alone, the Christmas classic that, well, I got stuff to say about this film and we'll get to it, but you had something that you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, I said last week that we were going to have a special installment of Kiki Had a Weird Childhood. We have talked many times on the show before that I was not allowed to go to movie theaters when I was a kid for religious reasons. This has the distinction of being the first movie I ever saw outside of a house. We went to the drive-in movie theater that was at the time in my town. It has been defunct for ages. Honestly, it closed down not too long after I went to it the first time. But this was such a weird moment in time for me personally because it was like a Saturday afternoon or something, and my parents said, "Get dressed, we're going somewhere." And they didn't always tell me where we were going, so I was kind of used to just doing that. And before we left the house, my parents kind of sat me down, and it was one of those, like, very special episode kind of talks.
Oh, no.
And they sat me down, and they were like, "Look, we're going to try something new. We have discussed it with other parents of faith, and they think that this is okay and that we're not doing anything wrong here, but we want you to know that if this doesn't go the way that we planned, we hope you won't think any less of us for trying it, but we really do think that this will be okay." And I was like, what is going on? I had no idea what was going on. And I wrote this story actually for a creative writing class I took in college where you had to write like a true story from your life. And the prompt was your happiest childhood memory, and my opening line to the story was, Satan lives here. Because that's kind of what I'd always been told. Like, we don't go to the movie theater because that's where Satan lives. And the movie theater the drive-in was just a break, like a driveway in some trees. And there was a little ticket booth and a little arm that would raise up to let the cars in after you paid your ticket. And you couldn't see anything else. It was just trees. And you went down like a little windy path, and then there was the screen and, you know, the parking lot for the thing. But so all I had ever seen of it was this like booth that apparently led straight to hell. But we went, and I remember that my first viewing of this movie was that I was incredibly bored with the film, but I was incredibly fascinated by the environment.
The environment of a theater?
Well, of the drive-through, yeah, because I'd never seen anything like it.
You could see a movie in your car.
Well, no, I mean, it was that too, but it was like there were other people around. There were people watching us watch the movie.
Never thought about that way.
And there were, you know, when you're in a completely dark movie theater, it's kind of hard to watch other people's reactions. But if you've ever watched people's reactions, especially children, to a movie that they're really into, it is one of the most magical and fascinating things you will ever see. And that's kind of what I spent most of the movie watching. And I didn't remember in my childhood kind of caring much for the movie itself, but I loved the experience. And I immediately was like, when are we going back? And it's kind of weird that a movie that I'm not terribly keen on was the thing that sold me on going to movies as an experience. And it's still one of my favorite things to do to this day, to go to a movie theater. I haven't been to a drive-in since I was a little kid, sadly. But
drive-ins
well,
kind
that's
of made
not
a
entirely true. I did earlier this year. I went and watched a special documentary that was shown in my town, and Amazon Prime was showing it, and they set up a pop-up drive-in theater.
I was going to say that drive-ins kind of made a comeback this year out of necessity.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm not as young as I was when I watched Home Alone, so I had like a lot of cricks in my back from sitting in a car that long watching a movie, but it was a nice throwback. We had popcorn and we chilled out in the car. They wouldn't let us leave the car for health reasons. We had to stay in our cars. But, so there wasn't, sometimes when you used to go to a drive-through, especially in the South, people would come in their pickup trucks and put like lawn chairs in the back of the pickup truck. Or a blanket in the back of the pickup truck and like hang out and watch the movie there, like in a big huddle and stuff like that. Or if you had teenagers, they were doing more than huddling.
A special huddle.
Special huddle. But yeah, so especially in the South, you had kind of all these like little mini parties in the back of pickup trucks when you went to the drive-through. And we couldn't do that, sadly, this year because everybody needed to stay like with their own little family group inside, windows up kind of thing. But it was nice to have
tailgate party sounds awesome.
I mean, that's basically what a football game is down here. You pull up your pickup truck, you grab a keg, and everybody just hangs out and gets super drunk, and then maybe watches some football later.
So yeah, this actually got put on Disney Plus within the last few weeks. to celebrate the film's 30th anniversary. So this was 30 years ago.
Don't we feel old?
Yeah, old. And
apologies to our older viewers because you are now super old.
yeah.
But that's the way linear time works, I'm told.
Yeah, and this, was the first of what would eventually become a franchise that maybe only has maybe a movie and a half of good material in it.
I'm not even sure I would give it that much.
There are 5 of these movies. 2 of them were direct to video.
I know about 3.
Huh?
I only know about 3. When did the other 2 come out?
So, okay, we have Home Alone 1, the one that we're going to talk about in a minute. There was Home Alone 2, the one that were in New York. Home Alone 3, which was a completely different cast, new characters, and that was the last theatrical release. Home Alone 4 was released a few years after this, direct video. They tried to bring back the character of Kevin McAllister, played by a new kid.
Yeah, that was in 2002. That was 12 years later.
Yeah.
That the 4th one was.
And then they released a 5th movie, which, again, new kids, new family. Yeah, and apparently prior to the Disney buyout, Fox was talking about a reboot of Home Alone. That might still be on the cards with Disney.
I don't know why. I don't know why.
Yeah.
This is one of the more baffling movie franchises to me, honestly.
This is one of those movies that, to me, became a classic because it was just run on TV every year. Like, I could see how people can like it, but I could see it not like this, like A Christmas Story or anything like that. This is this movie that's on TV every year. So we'll watch it, and it just became tradition that way.
Yeah, but at the time, this was the new hotness.
Yeah.
This original movie, in 1990, 91, when the sequel came out in 92, which kind of made sense. Okay. Not the movie, but the fact that they would make a sequel.
Yeah.
This movie was inescapable.
How many movies
TV show had a parody of this?
Yeah, even some of the comedy movies had a kid just running around slapping his face. Ah!
Yeah, that image was everywhere of him slapping his face and screaming.
The saddest one was when Mel Brooks put it in Robin Hood Men in Tights for no reason.
Yeah, no. But also, more and more things started to have the Home Alone idea behind it.
The kid in charge the kid power movie.
Yeah, it was the start of the kind of kid power movie in the sense of like kid pranking adults and getting one over on them.
Yeah, you get the ultimate culmination would be like 3 Ninjas or something.
Yeah, but there was also, they brought back Dennis the Menace.
Yeah.
Around this same time, and Dennis the Menace, that version of it was almost entirely just Home Alone with Mr. Wilson.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things. Honestly, there's like that movie, like a Blank Check or something that's kind of similar. There's all these movies where it's like kid gets left on his own and has to pretend that he's more grown than he is, and there's usually some adults trying to hurt him, but he gets it back. And it's always a little blonde kid too, because of Macaulay Culkin. It's always like an insufferable little blonde kid.
And they tried to twist the tail around. There was like a kid in King Arthur's court or something like that.
Yeah, this really did start the kind of kid power movement, which kind of went along with what Nickelodeon was doing at the time,
Yeah.
where you had a lot of these shows that were for kids and parents were completely a non-factor.
Clarissa Explains It All.
Clarissa Explains It All. I mean, you saw her parents occasionally, but they were almost entirely a non-factor, you know. And people now look at things like Stranger Things.
Mhm.
And they're like, where are the parents of these children? But like, that's the media we grew up on.
Yeah.
Our generation grew up on media where it was just kids wandering around doing whatever they wanted, and parents never came into Rugrats even.
Yeah.
They just put the kids in the playpen, and then the parents would disappear for an entire episode while the kids did whatever.
I'm going to say if it wasn't for Home Alone, like, Matilda probably would never gotten made.
Yeah, Matilda was Home Alone, but good.
With girls and magic.
With girls and magic, yeah. And like the most adorable like lesbian teacher in the world.
If any of you know Mara Wilson,
yeah,
give her a call.
No,
please.
if any of you know Mara Wilson, hook me up. She's amazing. So okay, the one thing that shocked me, excuse me, the one thing that shocked me about this rewatch, I have probably only seen this movie all the way through 3 times in my life. As ubiquitous as it is, everything else is kind of a clip here or there. But as far as dedicated, I sat down and watched this movie from beginning to end and paid attention to it probably only 3 times in my life. The first one was in the drive-thru. The second one, I think, was probably sometime in my late teens where I was like, have I been too hard on that movie? I will watch it again and see if I missed something. And then now. And the thing I noticed in this one that I don't think I ever noticed before, this is a John Hughes movie.
Yeah. This is John Hughes, Chris Columbus, John Williams.
Well, I knew the other two, but this is a John Hughes wrote this movie. I mean, it explains why they're in Chicago.
Yeah. Also explains why it's Christmas.
Also, yeah, explains Christmas, and it explains why there's an older brother that needs somebody to punch him in the head.
Yeah.
John Hughes had a thing for, you've got an older brother with a buzz cut that somebody just really needs to punch really hard. And be like, you're not it. Bro.
Only Macaulay Culkin doesn't have a magic genie from the computer to do it.
Exactly. That's kind of the only one of those films, I think, where that, insufferable older brother actually really gets his comeuppance.
And even the Christmas thing falls under Chris Columbus's wheelhouse. I mean, he did Gremlins as well. I went through his catalog. Quite a number of his movies are Christmas movies.
Yeah, and, it really freaked me out that this was John Hughes. And I can see it a little bit. Once you start to, there's he sort of does the, singing into a comb. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like Ferris Bueller. There's a kid getting horribly mistreated and forgotten by their family, which is very 16 Candles. There's little bits in it. It's like a John Hughes loaf. It's bits of John Hughes.
The greatest hits of John Hughes 80s movies.
Not the greatest bits. Definitely not the greatest bits. But bits of John Hughes.
The tropes,
shaped and formed into a new film.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really shocked me because I was like, doesn't John Hughes write good movies? And then I started looking at his list of movies he did, and I was like, oh, he did a couple of good movies, and then there's a lot of weird.
Yeah.
So maybe I just remember the good ones.
Yeah, this is a Fox movie, so Disney owns it through buying Fox.
Yeah, not originally a Disney film. This is very much not what Disney would have made in 1990.
No.
This was like anti-Disney when it came out. It's like, hey kids, do you not want to go see like Little Mermaid or whatever? Well, watch the cool film where you set people on fire with a blowtorch.
And a kid swears and look at porno mags.
Yeah, and watches movies with machine guns in them.
Yeah. So we talked about John Hughes, we talked about Chris Columbus, we've talked about John Williams at length on this show. And the music definitely feels like John Williams music.
Yeah. The John Williams music, and honestly, I didn't know really who John Williams was in 1990. I was just starting to watch movies that weren't like cartoons, you know? So I don't think I had seen Star Wars by this point. So I didn't really know who John Williams was, but the one thing I do remember from my original watching of the movie is that I absolutely loved the music. I hummed that song for like 3 weeks.
The Somewhere in My Memory song?
Yeah. The main theme. Also, am I the only one who thinks that it just sounds like John Williams trying to do the Abu Dores, Abu Dores?
Yes, it definitely.
I always get those two mixed up because they sound so similar and they're both related to Christmas. Yeah, I just always thought that like John Williams was like, what if that song but orchestrated? The thing about the plot of this film, and I'm not sure how many people really realize it because you have to be kind of a fan of both genres. This is a horror film done as a comedy.
I've seen so many people recut this film as a horror movie trailer.
But there's a reason for it. The idea of one person alone in a house that they can't really leave, being chased by something that wants to do them harm, and using the things around the house to protect themselves and fight back. This shows up in Halloween. It shows up again in the first Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a whole scene. Go back and watch Nightmare on Elm Street if you haven't recently. At the end of that movie, Nancy sets up Home Alone traps in her house to injure Freddy when she brings him out of the dream world. Like, she sets up tripwires and all kinds of stuff, things to hit him in the head. It's a Home Alone movie, but it's done not for comedy. Well, sort of for comedy because it's Freddy, but it's usually a teen girl alone in a house trying to fend off a man or monster of some sort that is trying to kill her. They just did that, but what if an adorable little blonde boy and the stakes aren't so high and it's done for slapstick?
So Kevin McAllister is the final girl.
Yeah, Kevin McAllister is the final girl. And it's really, if you watch a lot of those films and then go back and watch Home Alone with that in mind, you're like, oh my God, this really is. It uses all the same beats. At least when it gets to that part.
It's also, the music would be different. I mean, it's more cartoony music versus the more horror music that you would hear in a Halloween or anything like that.
Well, yeah. But it's what if that idea, but fun.
Yeah.
So they kind of lower the stakes. I mean, the wet bandits keep screaming like, I'm gonna kill that kid, and but the stakes never feel that high. It always feels like, these two are such goofballs that if they actually got their hands on Kevin, it would really, they might like shake him a little bit or something, but then they'd muck it up somehow,
Mm-hmm.
So you never really feel like Kevin's in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the end when they like grab him, you're like, yeah, he's not really.
Yeah. So let's kind of get into. We talked about the director, the writer, the music. We talked about Macaulay Culkin. Let's see who else is in this movie. Joe Pesci. We finally talked about Joe Pesci and these things.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. You don't really think Joe Pesci in this kind of podcast, but yep, here we are. You know, he's a gangster.
Yeah,
he's that Scorsese gangster guy. You know, he's in
he was a real life gangster with the Four Seasons, so it's like that was a thing.
Yeah, that is right, isn't it?
When I saw their movie and they pointed out that was Joe Pesci, it's like he knew the Four Seasons. He was in that little gang that they were in.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, okay, that's weird. But yeah, you can kind of see that, like, yeah, that does feel like just who he is. Like, I'm not sure he's ever really acted.
But then he was my cousin Vinny being the lawyer.
Yeah, but
it was still the same character.
As a gangster, it's like, what if a gangster but a lawyer? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he's a legend. What can you say about him? I mean,
what can we say about him that hasn't already been said about him?
Come on.
Yeah. Daniel Stern. We talked about Daniel Stern before.
Yeah, and I love that Daniel Stern has kind of two polar opposites in his career. Mm-hmm. He's like the wise adult fatherly type. Mm-hmm. Or he is the complete buffoon.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. He's either very subdued and it's that Wonder Years kind of tone. Like, when I look back on my childhood, I remember that, or it's like the Santa Claus ain't coming to get you now.
I used to heat up the ice cubes.
Yeah, it's one of those two extremes. I'm not sure I've ever really seen much in the middle of that in his career, but fun.
Yeah, Catherine O'Hara. We talked about her again.
Yeah, and at Christmas too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love her in Nightmare Before Christmas, yeah. And of course she's like got a bunch of Emmys now and stuff for having just come off of Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
So, she's doing well for herself.
John Candy. We have not talked about John Candy yet.
Yeah, and he's in here because of John Hughes. He worked a lot with John Hughes.
He would also work with Macaulay Culkin and Uncle Buck.
I think that was actually before he got cast in Home Alone. Yeah, Uncle Buck came out in '89, so he would have filmed that, and then that's probably how he got the audition or part in Home Alone.
Of course, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles, another holiday film.
Another Hughes movie too.
Yeah.
But of course, he will always be close to my heart for his role in Spaceballs.
Yeah, I'm a Mog. I'm my own best friend.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get better than that character. It's just like, I mean, it's like, of course, that's what Chewbacca is going to end up like in a Mel Brooks movie.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, it's going to be John Candy eating out of a dog bowl,
I do want to talk a little bit about Michael C. Morona, who plays one of Kevin's brothers, but I always know him as Big Pete from The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Yeah, he did go on to
another Kid Power show.
Yeah, it was very much a kid power show where it was like, where are all the adults in this?
Yeah. Anyone else you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, you do have John Hurd as the father.
Yeah.
So he is kind of an interesting figure. Did a lot of he either did like really big, huge, important drama films, like he did Awakenings with Robin Williams, big Oscar bait film. He was in Beaches, big Oscar bait film, and then he was in stuff like Chud. Yeah, you know. I mean, it's one of those like Daniel Stern where it's either like the most, perfect, award-winning, very serious thing, or just complete nonsense. So, he's another kind of fun one. One of his final roles was in Sharknado. It's like, what you gonna do? But he's fun in there. And of course, we do have to mention that Macaulay Culkin's brother, Kieran Culkin, is in this.
As Fuller, the cousin, the cousin that wets the bed.
Yeah, the one he never wants to be around.
I kind of like that the one person he doesn't want to be around is played by his own brother.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to tackle the plot of this thing, such as it is?
All right, so we have the McAllister family. We have the two big brothers. We have the father, Peter, and the uncle, Frank, and their younger brother, Bob, has recently got a new job in France, and he's going to fly the entire family to France for Christmas. So this whole movie starts with both families in one house, packing their stuff, getting ready to go to the airport tomorrow on a ticket to France for Christmas. And this entire family, there is not one likable person in this entire family. Not
really.
one.
Yeah, no, here's the first thing. This is the big question that everybody's been asking for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck does this family do that they're able to fly like 20 people to France for Christmas?
Well, they said Uncle Bob is paying for the flight. It's a very blink and you miss it line.
Yes, he's paying for the flight, but did he pay for that $3 million house in Chicago that they're living in?
Oh yeah, this movie takes place in Chicago.
No, seriously, I looked it up. The last time that house was on the market, $3 million.
It is also 1990. They're also white and they're likely rich.
Well, but that's the thing is like how they never really say, but here's my theory, because everybody's got their own theory, including that the reason why the family likes to watch gangster movies at Christmas time is because they're actually somehow related to organized crime.
Chicago trope. I'm not going to say it's not
Chicago
a thing.
trope. But he might just be a Chicago politician.
Possible.
Yeah, another form of organized crime in Chicago.
I mean, they think he was transferred to France, so maybe he works in Washington and that's where he's stationed.
I'm just thinking about Kevin's dad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just thinking about this, like, super amazing house they live in where they can afford. I mean, granted, it was 1990, but, like, you've got 5 kids and that kind of house. And in the second movie, when Kevin gets lost in New York, he has his dad's credit card, and that thing seems to be limitless, and his dad's never really that concerned about it. Like his dad's not like, and Kevin has my credit card. We're going to end up in debtor's prison. It's like, which is exactly what, like, if I took my father's credit card and tried to go away for like an hour, that would have been, my father would have been like, well, hope you have enough money for a tip because we're homeless now, like, and the fact that he's getting like suites at really good hotels in New York and stuff like that, ordering room service, and his dad doesn't really seem to blink an eye. Plus, they're going to Miami in that one. They're flying from Chicago to Miami to have like a giant family Christmas there. So what gives? Anyway, my theory is that they're like Kevin's grandparents or maybe great grandparents came into money because his family is so nonchalant about money that at least 2 generations of this family have grown up with money.
Uncle Frank seems to be a bit of a stingy guy. Like, he doesn't want to pay the pizza guy. He starts pocketing things he finds on the flight.
Yeah, but we've all known that one person with money that is also super stingy.
Yeah.
That'll only show up if there's like free food or whatever, and you're like, you could buy and sell me 15 times, dude. Why do you need free food?
Yeah.
But the rest of the family just seems to like, the kids have like Nintendos, and like Buzz's room is tricked out and he has a tarantula as a pet with like a really nice terrarium, and I mean that stuff isn't cheap.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that they're kind of like nouveau riche, but they're a couple of generations into it. My personal theory.
Possible. So yeah, the entire family, they're getting ready to go to the airport tomorrow, and we have Joe Pesci as Harry dressed as a cop, scouting out the place as you do.
This is why you never let a cop into your house without a warrant, kids.
And they tell him everything. Like, we're going to France. We have timers on our lights. We have automatic locks. It's like, you are telling the guy, granted, you think he's a cop, but you're still telling him everything that he needs to know to break into your house.
This is why you never talk to cops without a lawyer present, kids.
Yeah. Kevin is a really weird age in that he's too young to hang out with the older kids and too old to hang out with the younger kids. So yeah, he's kind of the odd one out.
Middle kid vibe to him.
Yeah. And he's complaining to mom that, hey, they're not letting me do anything. And Kevin kind of doesn't do anything at this point. He lets mom do everything for him. And all the kids are telling you, you don't even know how to pack a suitcase. Mom will do it for you. It's like, and they bully him for it. The older kids bully Kevin because he's kind of a mama's boy.
But also, is it just me, or is everyone in this family just monstrously evil to Kevin?
Yeah.
Because other than being a generally annoying 8-year-old, and honestly, what 8-year-old have you ever met that wasn't annoying? I was insufferable at 8. I'm probably insufferable now, but I was especially insufferable at 8. My parents did everything for me at that age. It's like, granted, I was an only child and my mother was rather hover, kind of, we didn't have the helicopter idea yet, but, she was that kind of parent. I was her only child and she wrapped me in a bubble, but it's kind of like, yes, he's an annoying kid, but all kids that age are annoying. Yeah, like, that's just being a kid.
Yeah, and the older kids are just digging into him. Even Uncle Frank is just not treating this kid with any kind of respect. And the parents are kind of dismissive of him. Hey, just if they don't want you to do something, there's a reason for it. Go along and do something else. And yeah, and it kind of angers Kevin to the point where he just doesn't want to be around this family anymore. The tipping point, let's kind of forward a bit. The tipping point being when they're having their dinner, their pizza, and older brother Buzz has eaten the pizza that was supposed to be for Kevin, because Kevin liked plain cheese pizza. He doesn't like sausage, he doesn't like pepperoni, he doesn't like olives, he just wants a plain cheese pizza, and Buzz ate it. to the point where he's pretending to throw it up and told Kevin to get a plate so he can have his pizza back. Which, of course, Kevin shoves Buzz and kind of knocks soda over everything, and they blame Kevin for it.
Yeah, and honestly, if you were ever a kid who got bullied and you ever dared kind of push back against the bully, you know this injustice. Because I guarantee that the adults were like, they punished you too.
It doesn't matter who started it. You shouldn't be fighting. You would have punished. Yeah.
Here's a hint. If you're a parent, it absolutely matters who started it. That is the only thing that matters.
Mm-hmm.
You find that out. You don't just I know it's annoying, but don't walk away from that. Find out who started it and fix the problem.
We also have to backtrack a bit. Buzz and Jeff and Kevin are in Buzz's room as they're worrying about the tarantula, saying, "Well, I just fed him; he'll be okay for a few weeks." But they look at their next door neighbor, Old Man Murray, and Buzz tells him the rumor around the town is that he killed his family, but they have no evidence, so they can't arrest him. I think it's just, granted, I don't think it's what the town is saying. It's just Buzz pulling something out of his butt.
Well, no, I don't think so, because when Marley and Kevin talk in the church,
mm-hmm.
he sees that Kevin is terrified of him, and he says, "You know what? There's a lot of stuff going around about me in the neighborhood. Don't believe any of it." So I think he knows that the kids in the neighborhood have this story.
And yeah, he's this old man. He lives by himself. No one ever comes to see him. So yeah, things, people will talk. He looks kind of creepy. I can see how things can be spread. Kids can make up stories and whatnot. But yeah, this is, and every time Marley is shown, they have scary music, so it makes the audience think that he's supposed to be this very, very bad man. And Kevin,
also they kind of dress him down. Like, he lives in what is apparently one of the richest freaking neighborhoods seriously, every house on this street is like $1 million or more house.
Mm-hmm.
But he's always dressed in kind of ratty clothes. Like, he has that long beard that's usually kind of unkempt,
Yeah.
He kind of they replaced that character with an actual homeless woman in the sequel, but they kind of make you think that this is like a street person. In fact, when I did my rewatch this time, I was shocked when they said he was a neighbor. Because my entire life, I've thought that was just like a homeless guy who shoveled sidewalks for money in their neighborhood.
Mm.
I never knew that he was like a neighbor.
Yeah, so let's get back.
Lived there.
Let's fast forward. Kevin is punished for ruining dinner and kind of getting the tickets wet. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment. And Mom kind of punishes Kevin by having him sleep in the attic that night. Luckily, there's a fold-out couch there.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be sleeping there with the little wet the bed kid, but he was like, I don't want to. She was like, okay, we'll put him somewhere else. But he was like, I don't want to sleep on the third floor. It's creepy. And then he gets up there, and I'm like, that is better than any bedroom I have ever had in my entire life. That's better than my bedroom now.
That is like the attic bedroom that 16-year-old Kevin would love.
Yeah, that's the attic bedroom that, 39-year-old Kiki would love. Like, I want that thing. That's more space than I have now.
Yeah, and so he makes the wish. I wish my family would go away. And as to kind of drive the point home, the camera zooms in on the Santa Claus ornament in the front of the house as a big windstorm comes up and knocks a tree down and knocks out the power. As the family ends up sleeping in as the
clocks and the phones go out.
Yeah, the clock goes out, the phones go out, everything goes out. And here comes the shuttle buses to take them to the airport. And now the entire family is scrambling because they slept in and they got to finish packing, get clothes on, and they have to get to the airport. And it doesn't help that the neighbor kid comes by, tries to wonder what's going on, to the point where
starts digging through their suitcases. Like, what kind of little klepto kid lives next door to them?
Yeah, and we get the neighbors are going to go to Florida for Christmas, and because the kid is hanging around the shuttle buses going through the suitcases, he is counted among the children that are going to the airport. So they think Kevin is with them, even though this is just the neighbor kid.
He's still asleep in the attic, yeah.
Yeah, no one woke him up. But, hey, we counted everyone. We have, 11 kids, 4 parents, blah, 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 blah. And, yeah, so they think everyone's with them, and they, on their way out, making it to O'Hare Airport. Oh, I've been in that airport many times.
Yeah. We've both been through that airport quite a bit. You more than me, but yeah. Here's the one thing that I also didn't know until the rewatch. Mm-hmm. If you'd asked me a week ago, I thought all of those kids were his brothers and sisters. It was only in the rewatch that I was like, and in fact, it wasn't even on the rewatch. It was looking on the Wikipedia page for something. I noticed that it's listed as like, Kevin's cousin, and all. So apparently there's I say only, but there's 5 kids in the main family.
Yeah, Kevin's direct relations.
Yeah. Kevin's brothers and sisters, there's 5 children altogether in that one, and then the other 6 or 7 are
Frank's kids.
Well, I think 2 of them they say belong to the one that's in Paris, because she said the older 2 are still going to school in the U.S.
Okay.
And now we're taking them back. So it's the collective children of these 3 brothers, which I never got on my previous watch throughs. Mm-hmm. And I always thought, like, I hope they adopted some of those kids. Like, what? Why? To me, 5 kids is too many. I'm like, no. I'll let you push as far as 4, and then I start wondering. Later on in the movie, we do discover that the family is Catholic, so. But still,
we don't know how long we don't know we know the age of the actors, but we don't know the age of the characters and how long they've been together, or how young were they when they had the first kid. We don't know that.
But there comes a point. I mean, I know I'm saying this from the outside because I was an only child, but to me, there's only so much time you can give to a child. Mm-hmm. And for like every subsequent child you have, that's like less time you have to devote to a particular kid. And I think most people can handle 2 or 3 pretty easily. I'll let you pump it to 4. It's like, okay, 4. But then after that, I'm like, unless you're like super wealthy and you're like adopting kids so they won't be in the system. But like if you're having like biological children of your own, I start kind of getting side eye after about 4.
I mean, we see that they're well off, and so who knows? Well, they make it to the airport. Here's another blink and you'll miss it that I didn't notice until this rewatch. The parents are in first class and all the kids are flying coach.
Yeah.
We only see the parents. We never see what's going on in coach.
Well, also, like, you don't want to have to build 2 plane sets.
Yeah, I get it. But it would have been nice to see the kids having no idea that Kevin is missing.
Yeah, the mom is just hyperventilating in first class that the kids are like. But honestly,
what's mom's problem?
But honestly, how did the kids not notice as well? I mean, once you're kind of on the plane, yeah, there was like Game Boy at that time, and they were rich enough to have one, but like, there's not a lot of entertainment on a plane unless you bring your own.
yeah, in 1990 we didn't have the little TVs in the back of the seats yet.
Yeah, I took a flight to Paris a few years after this, like 8 years later, and there still wasn't those little TVs and stuff. You know, I mean, it was like that was a boring flight. And fortunately, I like to read, but there was nothing.
From like they kind of mention it later in the film with Buzz. It's like they kind of didn't really. I think they was kind of still mad at Kevin. They didn't really want to acknowledge him at that point.
Well, also Buzz says, like, who cares about Kevin? Like, because the sister starts getting upset. She's like, oh no, he's got to be so scared. He doesn't know how to, like, make his own sandwich or anything. And Buzz is like, who cares? Whatever.
He's a little annoying little S word.
Yeah. So, you know, Buzz probably, I'm going to say later they sent Buzz to a live-in military camp.
Buzz kind of gets a bit of a redemption in the final minutes of the movie.
Not really a redemption.
He says, hey, good thing you didn't burn the house down. That's the closest thing a character like Buzz would say, hey, we missed you.
Yeah, and that's not good, you know. I wouldn't send him to a military camp. I would send him to, like, a how to express your feelings without anger camp, but, you know.
So, yeah, and as they get on the plane, they think, I wonder if we forgot anything. And on cue, we see Kevin waking up out of the attic and seeing that the family's gone.
But, you know, I got to admit, being a kid who at least one side of my family was kind of drove me nuts, and holidays with them, I was always like, oh, you know. But I love when he realizes it. You know, he gets up, he wanders around, he turns on the TV, and then he's like, why is no one yelling at me? And then he realizes they're gone, and he's like, I made my family disappear, and he's upset, and then all of a sudden he starts remembering all the things they said to him the night before.
Yeah.
And then he just gets that giant smile on his face. He's like, I made my family disappear, you know, he's like so happy. And I was like, as a kid, I was like, yeah, I could do with that. I respect the kind of elation he has when he realizes he's alone. Because the first time I was left alone in a house by myself, that's how I reacted. At first I was like, no, they're tricking me. This is a prank. I'm not all alone in the house, am I? I mean, of course, I knew I was going to be alone. You know, my father said, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want to go with me or do you want to stay here? And I was like, wait, I get a choice? Because I'd never had a choice before. And my father left and I just kind of like ran around the house expecting him to pop out at any minute and be like, haha, gotcha, go to your room, you're grounded. You know, it's like, because it was never a thing that had happened to me before. It was like going to the movie theater for the first time. This is a brand new experience and I don't know how to react. So the way Kevin reacts when he realizes he's all alone in the house, where he's just like, you know, I'm eating garbage and watching bad movies. Somebody should come punish me, you know.
Yeah, see how far are they going to let this prank go forward, you know?
Yeah, and it's kind of, I did the same thing. You know, I was like, I turned on the TV and I turned it to a channel I wasn't allowed to watch. You know, it wasn't even a bad channel. We didn't have bad channels in my house, but you know, it was like, oh no, I'm watching A&E. Somebody come get me. You know, it was like, it was one of those kind of things for me. And watching Kevin do that, I'd kind of forgotten about that part of the movie, and I was like, okay, I relate to this kid in this moment.
And like any little kid, the first thing he does is go into his brother's room and looks through his stuff.
Yeah, like plays with his baseball cards and climbs on the shelf and breaks the tarantula terrarium and releases the tarantula, which is a plot point later.
He plays with a BB gun.
He goes and jumps on his parents' bed.
Yeah, because of course Buzz would have a BB gun.
Yeah, you know, the day I want to say back when we gave kids firearms all willy-nilly, but I live in the South and that's called your 12th birthday.
And like I said, he looks through Buzz's porn magazines and is disgusted because there's no clothes on these people because he's 8.
Yeah, when you're 8, you're like, ew, I don't get that, which is appropriate. You're not supposed to get it when you're 8, like,
Yeah,
good job.
Girls still had cooties back then.
Yeah.
But let's get to the part that everyone always quotes. Angels with filthy souls.
Yeah, this is such a weird film
movie within
a
a movie. Like, this is not a real movie. They filmed this scene exclusively for this movie.
It is based off a real film, a James Cagney film called Angels with Dirty Faces, but it's kind of a parody of that. Yeah,
we have Ralph Foodie as the main gangster. The infamous "Keep the change, you filthy animal." And we got Michael Guido as Snakes. R.I.P. Snakes. You didn't have a chance.
Yeah. I know a Snakes? Do I know a Snakes? I don't think I know any Snakes.
Yeah, I mean, that scene, mostly from part 2, because he says, "Merry Christmas, you filthy animal." That is like one of the most known scenes. Even if you've never seen the movies, you know that scene.
Yeah, and it's because they use it so often. It's a big part of the movie, and they replay the same couple of scenes because they only filmed 2 or 3 scenes.
Yeah.
But they replay those a bunch in throughout the movie. So you kind of, by the end of the film, you kind of feel like you've watched more of that film than you have.
Yeah.
Because it's always on in the background.
Yeah, part of me wants to know what the rest of that movie would have been like, And it's your regular black and white gangster movie. That's all. But it's like, it's always bothered me. It's like, yeah, I know it's just the one scene, but kind of want to know what the rest of that movie would have been like.
Yeah, like, how did he know Snakes? How did he get him over to his office or house or wherever he is in order to make that kill? Yeah.
And yeah, meanwhile, back on the plane, Mom finally figures out what was missing. Kevin!
Yeah.
Yeah, that is that one scene of Catherine O'Hara yelling "Kevin" has been like everywhere. It's like in the trailer. It's anytime they advertise this movie, they use that scene. I used that scene when I made the promo for this month's episodes.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that as much as you see that one shot, it kind of sticks in your head that she freaks out more than she does. She goes like, "Kevin!" And then the next time you see her, she's just like, we've got to get back to Chicago. But she's not like, I don't know.
There's probably at least another hour or so of her yelling and hyperventilating that we don't see.
Yeah, it just seems kind of weird that she has like that 1-2 second freak out, and then the next time we see her, she's rather calm-ish for the situation, in my opinion.
She's still freaked out, but she's no longer yelling.
Yeah. I mean, I would, if I left my dog somewhere, I would be grabbing people and punching them in the face until somebody helped me,
And we get the big D-bag move from Uncle Frank. You can tell he has no love for Kevin whatsoever. "Oh, it's not so bad. I left my glasses at home." Wah, wah.
Yeah.
And Uncle everyone
Frank's awful.
Yeah, everyone looks at him as like, you...
Yeah.
Like, even his own wife is looking at it like, really? You're going to equate this kid to your glasses?
I want a divorce.
Yeah.
But we get the first run-in, back with Kevin, in there. We get the first run-in with the bandits.
Yeah.
And Kevin scares them off pretty quick by turning on the lights.
Smart move, though.
Yeah. He doesn't call the cops, which is weird because, like, a rich white kid in 1990, that was, like, drilled in your head, I wasn't even rich, and that was drilled in my head. Like, if you hear a noise outside, call the cops immediately,
Yeah, but then they come over there, and then they find out that this kid is home alone, and then he tells them, "My parents are in Paris." That's That's some child protective service and stuff right there.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. But the thing to me is that it starts out with, does the movie want the Wet Bandits to be smart or not? Because Joe Pesci has gone around and cased like this entire neighborhood to the point where he knows to the second when all of their light timers come on, where everybody is going to be for the holidays. Like that one's in Florida, they're going to Paris, they're, like, and he's telling Daniel Stern like all this information, which makes you think like, okay, they're smart criminals, because apparently they've been hitting a lot of houses and they haven't been caught yet. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the movie, they are the dumbest. I mean, like, they don't have a lick of common sense.
They go from what Wile E. Coyote thinks he is to what he actually is.
Yeah, kind of. And I'm like, as dumb as they act in the second half of the movie, it kind of undoes all the really smart planning that the movie wants you to think. Like, oh, these are formidable antagonists here. The kid is going to be in danger because... And the second Kevin does, like, anything, that evaporates, and they're complete,
Yeah.
Cool. I don't understand why, I don't understand how the movie thinks it can have it both ways, and I think that is a thing that I've never liked about the film. I think if the bandits were smarter or acted a little more reasonably, I think I would like the movie better, because it makes what Kevin does smarter and more of a triumph. But I think if you use even the most basic of logic, and I think they did that on like Robot Chicken or something one time, where it was like, if these criminals had as much sense in the second half of the movie as they do in the first half of the movie, and it's like, oh, he's thrown water on the stairs to make ice, and they're like, whatever, I got a bag of salt in the car. Like, it's like, oh, that's, he's booby-trapped the house. Okay, well, I'll just go carefully through the house then, instead of running headlong,
Yeah.
I'll lure him outside somehow.
So we got the mom here, and she's just frantic too, I got to get home to my son, and the best I can do is like the next day, and she can't wait, and she's going to stay in the airport and wait on standby to get a flight home.
Yeah, I kind of like the resolution of the mom trying to get home, though.
Yeah.
Because she goes through all this, like, wacky shenanigans and finally makes it home, and then, like, 5 minutes later, the rest of the family walks in, and they're like, we did the smart thing.
Yeah, we waited a day, and like that you didn't want to wait, and then now we're home.
Yeah, we're home at the exact same time, and we didn't have to spend all night in a U-Haul with a polka band.
Yeah. Well, I can understand she wasn't thinking clearly, mom intuition and all that. I got to get back to my son, but yeah, and she was not listening to anyone else, and I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, but it's like it's a nice little funny bit at the end.
No, nobody in this movie acts rationally, because this movie doesn't work if anyone does the logical thing at any point along the way.
Yeah.
Like, what? Even an older child, like, what's that oldest girl, like 13 maybe and stuff?
Yeah.
I went on like field trips and whatever. my parents used to chaperone field trips and stuff for schools. And it didn't matter if one of the older kids is like, I did the head count and I made sure everyone that, like, the adult always goes back and checks. Like, I know you're short on time, but it really doesn't take more than like 20 seconds to turn around and be like, yep, all the kids are here, Yeah.
And yeah. So eventually the bandits find out that Kevin is home alone when the dad calls the neighbor that's supposed to be in Florida, and says, hey, can you check on Kevin? We left him behind. Which starts to plan up that they're going to hit that house again.
The days when anybody could just wander into your house and hear all of your messages.
Yeah. Lock your doors. Well, the doors were locked. They broke in with crowbars.
But, yeah. I just, it's kind of thin on plot. But this whole kind of first chunk of the movie, and honestly, it is 2/3 of the movie. The part that you remember when it's like, hey, what happens in Home Alone? You are remembering 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
That was another thing that shocked me on this rewatch. I was like, you know how we didn't get to Toyland until like the last 15 minutes last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get to the quote unquote good part of this movie until the last 20 minutes of the movie. But most of the movie is dedicated to Kevin figuring out how to do things on his own.
Yeah, and that was the big thing before. He can't pack his bag, he can't do laundry, he can't do anything on his own. By the end of the movie, he's buying groceries, he's doing his own laundry. He gets over his fear of the dark part of the basement and everything. He there's a big scene where he walks out of the house saying, I'm not afraid anymore.
And then he immediately screams and runs back inside the house.
Yeah.
But we get the scene. Here's the one thing I always wanted to know. Why does Kevin keep putting acid on his face? Like, every day you wake up and you put acid on your face. I know it's supposed to be like shaving lotion or whatever, but yeah, there's a tingle to that stuff, but it's not like the only reason it really burns is because you've just run a razor across your face, which Kevin does not do.
Yeah.
Like if your pores are closed, like, because when I was a kid, like after the movie, I'm like, why does he keep putting stuff on his face and screaming? My dad was like, well, it's aftershave and it tingles. And so like I went and I put my dad's aftershave on my face and I was like, okay, it's like putting, mouthwash on your face or something, but it wasn't like screaming burn. And my dad's like, well, when you've just run a razor over your skin and all of your skin is abraded and stuff, yes, it is. And I was like, oh, well, then why is he screaming? Because he didn't shave his face.
It's a movie, kid. So yeah,
yeah.
And yeah, let's kind of fast forward here because let's get to the next night where they actually decide to get the house again, and Kevin is aware that the cop that he saw a few days ago is in fact a robber because of the gold tooth.
And also because they followed him creepily down the street.
Yeah, that's the first dumb move they do in the movie. Let's follow him. They say keep an eye on him, then they end up following him.
Yeah, at like 20 feet away in a giant van on a completely empty street. Yeah. They're not being incognito there.
And I have no idea why this family has a bunch of mannequins in their basement, but it's a good thing they did because now Kevin has set up the mannequins with string to look like there's a big party going on in the house. Oh, and hey, Michael Jordan's in this movie.
Yeah. Big cutout of Michael Jordan. But
it's Chicago.
Yeah, because it's Chicago. But yeah, it's creative, and Kevin is actually kind of smart and more capable than they give him credit for. Which makes me wonder if the mom has been, like, babying him this whole time.
It's possible.
That maybe he's not incompetent or whiny. It's just that the mom does everything. Because even at the beginning of the movie, he's like, hey, I've never packed a suitcase before. Can you show me how to pack a suitcase? He's not like, hey, can you pack my suitcase for me? He's kind of asking, like, hey, can you tell me what to do?
Yeah.
Because I don't know the steps. Teach me.
And,
And when he's left alone, he kind of goes like, okay, well, what are the groceries that are usually in the house? Well, we usually have milk and we have eggs and we have bread and I'm going to need something for dinner. So maybe a microwave. I mean, he really thinks it out.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at 8, good for him, you know?
If led to him, I mean, if actually, you might be right about the whole babying thing. Kevin is technically the youngest of the 5. Even though there are younger cousins, so it's possible that the mom has just been babying him this whole time, not letting him do anything. And again, if you're the baby, you kind of do get picked on by the older siblings.
Yeah, but like when he's left on his own, he's like, oh, how do I fake that there's a party going on in the house? Well, I'll put a mannequin on a record player and make it look like it's dance. I mean, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't have come up with that at 8. That's awesome. Go him. You know?
Yeah.
And all the booby traps he comes up with and stuff are, it's like really brilliant.
Even coming up with a way to get the groceries through the checkout line when the cashier is asking, "Where are your parents, young man?" "Oh, they're in the car." You think they would let their own kid do all this by himself?
Yeah, where do you live? I can't tell you that because you're a stranger. You know, it's like.
Yeah.
But honestly, when I was that age, sometimes my parents would send me into the store alone.
Yeah, you're old enough to.
Go inside, buy the things on this list. Here's some money, bring them out. You know.
If you have any trouble, I'm right here. But I think that you can do it. And yeah, I mean, he actually buys responsible things. Granted, he also buys things that he's going to set up to get the robbers. But for the most part, he's buying actual groceries and not, in other circumstances, an 8-year-old with money would probably buy candy and ice cream and stuff.
Yeah, but when he's kind of saying the prayer and whatever, he makes the joke about this like very healthy, nutritious macaroni and cheese microwave meal. But honestly, left up to my own devices, I don't always buy that.
Yeah.
That responsibly now, I'm like, mac and cheese microwave meal is a healthier meal than I have some weeks,
Yeah.
Like 2 nights ago, I ate an entire can of chocolate frosting out of the can.
Because you're an adult.
Because I'm an adult. I got a cinnamon toast crunch ice cream in my fridge right now. Because I am an adult. So yeah, Kevin is a very responsible kid. I kind of dig Kevin. Like, now that I'm an adult and I look back, I'm like, kind of an awesome kid.
Yeah. Let's kind of fast forward. Kevin does the first wave of defending the house by convincing the robbers that the Angels with Filthy Souls movie is an actual gangsters that have taken over the house.
Daniel Stern thinks that somebody has been murdered in the house, which I love.
Which leads to, Joe Pesci's like, well, if we leave now and they ask about it, wouldn't it be easier to find out who did it? So they decide to stick around and see if anyone comes out of the house.
Yeah, because they don't want to be pinned for murder.
Yeah.
Which, I got to admit, Joe Pesci is kind of smart in that respect. Like, you don't want to be pinned for murder.
You can go away a lot longer for murder than you can for robbery.
Yeah, it's like, he's like, I rob houses, but they're not violent robbers. They wait until people are gone. They don't want to, like, hold people up at gunpoint, Then
they flood the house.
And that is the weirdest freaking... Anyway.
Yeah, the Daniel Stern character, he's like, that's our calling card. They'll know we did it. And Pesci is just like, that's stupid. Which it does. It ends up biting them in the butt at the end of the movie.
Because the cops say we know exactly how many houses you've broken into because they're all done in the same way.
Yeah. Mom, Catherine O'Hara, has made it back to the States. I think, where is she at? Texas, I believe she says she's at.
Well, she ends up in Texas for a little bit, and then eventually she ends up in Scranton.
Yeah.
She has like a layover in Houston. I don't know how that works, like how you get on a plane that goes from Paris to Houston to Scranton. Anyway.
Yeah, so, and this is where John Candy's character comes in, as they're a band, their flight got canceled, and they're renting a van to get to Milwaukee for a gig, and they agreed to drop her off in Chicago since it's on the way.
Yeah.
Nice guy, and we find out
the most depressing story.
Yeah.
Like when they're in the van, because she's like, I feel like such a, the most of the band is asleep in the back of the van, and it's just John Candy and Catherine O'Hara, and she says, I feel like the worst mom in the world who just leaves their kid someplace. And he's like, well, I left my kid in a funeral parlor one night. He was alone with a corpse. But after 6 or 7 weeks, he started talking again. He seems fine now. Like,
that kid's going to be in therapy for the rest of his life.
Oh, but you know what the weird thing is that when I said I was watching this movie, my father said, yeah, my parents left my brother in a church overnight. My grandfather was a pastor. They left my uncle in a church overnight when he was a kid. They closed up the church one night, and they woke up the next morning and they were like, where is he? They went back and he was just like still asleep on a pew in the church.
Aww.
And then he said, yeah, and my friend left his son at a road stop. They stopped for a pit stop on a road trip. And they just left the kid sitting at a picnic table and drove off. They were like 2 hours down the road and realized that they had to turn around and go back. And they got back and the kid was still sitting at the picnic table, not scared, not crying, just waiting.
This reminds me of a story that kind of happened to my nephew. It was like his birthday party. We had it at a Chuck E. Cheese style place, and the party was winding down, and me and my family were leaving, and we get a call like an hour after we had left the party at this Chuck E. Cheese place, like, where's the kid? Like, at the time he was like 5. Where's my son? It's like, what do you mean, where's your son? It's your kid, and we thought you were going to take him home. Well, we thought you were going to take him over for the weekend. So we had to go all the way back to Chuck E. Cheese and pick him up, and he was just there playing in video games in the arcade. He didn't even know anyone was gone.
So apparently, children are easily abandoned is the point of the story.
Yes.
Maybe we should fit children with those little, like geotags that you put on your stuff, and then your cell phone's like, you left your keys under the couch.
Yeah. So we get to let's kind of fast forward to the point where Kevin is starting to miss his family, to the point where he goes to Santa Claus, or this Santa Claus's helper, and just says, if you see Santa Claus, can you ask him to get my family back? My family's gone, and I kind of wish I had him back. And you kind of feel Santa kind of feel for the kid, and is like, I'll see what I can do.
That Santa is thinking that this is a much darker story than it actually is.
Yeah, like these
because
characters
I'm sorry,
dead.
if a little kid walked up to me and is like, tell Santa I don't want any presents, I just want my family back, I'd be like, oh my god, what happened to your family?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just thinking like there was a house fire or something. Like, oh my god, like these stories that would be going through my head if that was me. But
yeah.
But then we get kind of the emotional core of the movie, which is Kevin ending up in the church.
Yeah. He says he sits down at the pew. There's the kids choir singing hymns, and Mr. Marley ends up sitting next to him and tells him, "Hey, you don't got to be afraid of me. I know people say stuff about me, but it's not true." And he talks about his own story, that one of the girls in the choir is his granddaughter.
And he's never really met her, apparently.
No,
because he said long before Kevin's family moved in, he had a fight with his son. And this is the way he can see his granddaughter.
Which is sad.
Yeah.
And, falling out with family is tough, especially around the holidays. It's been, as Kevin even says in the movie. And Kevin just says, well, why don't you just call your son? And Marley, Marley kind of like, I'm scared of that he'll reject me. And Kevin kind of relates his own experiences. I was scared and now I'm not. And you won't ever know until you actually try. If he says no, at least you'll know. And, and that's kind of where we leave Marley for now.
Yeah. And Kevin goes home to Rambo up his house. These traps are ingenious.
Yes.
And only one of them is really foreshadowed at the beginning of the movie when they say that the ant stepped on one of his micro machines and nearly broke her neck.
Yeah.
But the rest of them, he's got all these tripwires. He uses the tar. He uses the Chicago winter against them by icing down the stairs. He starts to get a little murdery with some of them. The blowtorch.
The blowtorch,
the iron.
Yeah. Poor, you gotta feel sorry for Joe Pesci. First, his hand is burned by the doorknob, and then his head is burned by the flames, by the torch.
Yeah. This is the second time in like a month we've had somebody sear their hand on a hot object in one of our movies.
Yeah.
But the first one was a Nazi, so he deserved it.
Yeah, this movie pretty much goes from a kid movie to freaking Roadrunner and Coyote.
I think the two cruelest ones are the blowtorch and the nail just sticking out of the stair.
I watched it and I cringed after seeing him put the nail through his foot. It's like, oh.
But bravo to Daniel Stern that he actually walks on his heel on that foot for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
That he actually, every other scene for the rest of the movie, he walks back on his heel and he never puts any weight on the ball of that foot because of the nail injury. Which bravo to him for good acting on that. Honestly, I read that apparently they had to redo a lot of the stunts in the movie because they weren't funny enough for the director. And that it kind of caused a lot of tension on the set. And they also didn't use a lot of the typical safety equipment because the ability to remove things like wires and harnesses that we have now, not really a thing in 1990. And apparently the director thought it was ruining the shot, so they pretty much all of these stunts were done without most of the safety equipment you would expect.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a problem.
Yeah, so apparently getting all these infamous stunts was kind of, more dangerous than most people generally sign up for.
Yeah.
Apparently, Macaulay Culkin also has a permanent scar on one of his fingers from this film.
Okay, from what? What stunt was it?
When he's hanging on the hook at the end of the movie, when they catch him, kind of in that last bit, and Joe Pesci says, "I'll bite your finger off," and then he gets whacked on the head with a shovel. Apparently, when they were rehearsing that, he did the thing where he said, I'm going to bite your finger, and kind of puts his mouth over the finger. He never bites down, of course, but he kind of puts his mouth over the finger. And apparently when he reacted to the getting whacked on the head in the thing, he slipped and actually chopped down on Macaulay Culkin's finger. And apparently he still has a scar, is what I've read. Um,
His memento
so,
from Joe Pesci.
yeah, it was apparently completely an accident that was not meant to happen, but, oh well.
Good thing Marley was watching, because he knocks them both out with a shovel.
And then he takes Kevin and just leaves him there, because I guess he doesn't want the rap for assault.
Well, there's already a story around the neighborhood of him killing his own family, so he doesn't need that on his rap sheet.
Listen, kids, nobody wants to answer questions to the police. Let's just cheese it.
And yeah, the police show up and the bandits are arrested. And like you said, they know every house that they've hit because all of the faucets were left running. Which is, for Daniel Stern's character, it's like, hey, we got recognition, we're famous, but for Pesci, like, we got caught because of your dumb ass.
Yeah, it's like, and I love that Daniel Stern is like, we are the wet bandits, W-E-T bandits. I already have a name. And Joe Pesci's like, you just admitted to everything. Like, our defense is I'm not with him. The thing that shocked me most, and another thing that I never noticed before, was he defeats, and of course it's like 10:30 probably, when the police leave with the bandits and everything. Kevin's back home. He spends the rest of the night cleaning the house back up and removing all the traps and fixing anything that's broken, putting presents under the tree, and a tree that he bought himself.
Yeah.
Because they were going to Paris, so I put up a tree, so he gets a tree earlier in the movie and decorates it, and and this 8-year-old kid makes this house immaculate, except for, as we find out in the final scene, he can't fix the broken, but I'm sure he probably picked things up and straightened them up even in that room.
Well, in his mind, Santa was going to bring his family back, so he wants to make sure the house was nice for them.
Yeah, but like an 8-year-old kid doing that much cleaning, like, this is a super responsible kid. Why does everyone spend the entire movie calling him a baby and giving him crap?
Because he's never given
Kevin.
Yeah, justice for Kevin. So yeah, he's traveling with Sweetie. Again, mom traveling with the John Candy band. Next day he wakes up and he is calling for his family, hoping that Santa brought them, but they kind of. At first he's like, okay, it doesn't work, and then he hears his mom's voice.
But then he doesn't see his mom, and then he's sad again. And then he turns around and his mom is there.
And in a moment, it's almost like he doesn't believe that it's his mom. There's Macaulay Culkin does this face like, is this really my mom? Or even like, should I even forgive my mom for leaving me?
Yeah, am I dreaming maybe still? It's kind of a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, and then just Catherine O'Hara goes, Kevin, baby, I'm sorry. And he just hugs her, and there's this big love, big moment, mother and son reunited, the music swells. It's a very beautiful, heartwarming moment. And as soon as that happens, here comes the rest of the family into the house saying, how'd you get here? We took the flight you didn't want to wait for.
We did the smart thing, and we're rested. But we get the final little, cherry on top of the beautiful Christmas Sunday or whatever. As he looks outside the window and he sees at the neighbor house, there's Marley and his son and his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter, and they've brought presents and they've come over for Christmas.
And the moment is
well.
Until Buzz sees his room.
Yeah, until Buzz is like, what did you do to my room? I hope the tarantula is okay.
Yeah, and that's the movie. That's Home Alone from 1990, this 30-year-old movie. Half this movie is good, not so much the other half, or at least a third of this movie is good.
Yeah, there are moments of good wrapped in a giant tortilla of nothing.
Yeah. Like,
It's like you get a burrito and there's like a couple of strips of steak in there surrounded by packing peanuts wrapped in a tortilla. Like from the outside it looks really good, but when you start digging into it, it's like most of this is packing peanuts. I got such complicated feelings about this movie because, kind of like you said about last week's movie, there's so much nostalgia wrapped up in this movie.
yeah.
This was a formative memory of my childhood, as we discussed at the top of the show.
Yeah.
But even when I watched this as a kid, I did not like this movie. It was a cultural moment, you know. You did the same thing I did with your friends, and you'd slap your face and you go, oh, and you know, you might like take your toy cars and go, oh, I've set up traps. I hope nobody slips on them, you know. Hopefully you didn't actually like injure anyone in your family when you did that.
Not intentionally.
But it's not a good movie.
No. It's like I said, it's a third of a good movie.
Yeah, there's like 30 minutes of this movie that are really interesting. This would have made like a nice little holiday TV special.
Yeah.
This is like maybe an hour-long TV special about remember how much you love your family because one day they might not be there, and also some slapstick.
Mm-hmm.
But most of this movie is Kevin just kind of wandering around being like, oh, I need groceries. Well, might as well go buy a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
I wonder how you do laundry. Like, most of this movie is really mundane. It's just a kid kind of learning how to be
independent.
A part of a family. Yeah, like somewhat independent.
If this has been done, again, 20 years later where the internet was a thing, I don't think he would have had a lot of his problems.
Well, also, most of it would be him watching YouTube tutorials and becoming, like, a chef, you know?
And ordering everything he needed off Amazon.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that they say that the phones don't work.
Mm-hmm.
But then later he orders a pizza, and he calls the police from his home phone. So at some point, the phone started working. Why couldn't the family ever get through? Because the family kept calling from France, from the uncle's house.
I see it from, in Kevin's mind, he really did make his family disappear. Like, they did not go to France. They no longer exist in his mind.
So you think he was just too scared to answer the phone?
Yeah. Like, in his mind.
Like, he didn't want anybody to know that he had wished his family away and he was just too scared?
I wish that there was a scene about that, but that's my personal opinion.
But also, like, they would have had an answering machine with a tape that you can hear throughout the house, like the old answering machines.
Like earlier in the movie in the other house.
Yeah, so you can imagine that there's probably like an answering machine tape full of his father being like, Kevin, if you're at the house, Kevin, if you come home, if somebody finds Kevin, like, call us, this is where we're at, you know. So that strains credulity. Like, if the phones had been out because of the power outage for the whole movie, yeah, but the fact that Kevin calls out from the house at multiple points in the movie kind of messes up that plot point. Yeah.
So let's get to the question. I think we kind of already answered the question of whether there's magic in this movie. I'm going to say it's just nostalgia.
There's a couple of glitter sparkles in there, but most of it is packing peanuts. It's a lot of fluff for like 20 or 30 minutes of interesting.
If you really want to watch this movie again, just watch the last half hour.
Yeah, skip to the end.
So that's, I think, we're going to say not enough for a full score of magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Home Alone, all our thoughts on that. And we'll move on to next week. Well, they say that Christmas time is time you spend with the family. So we're going to spend it with one of our favorite families, the Muppet family.
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah, not just the Muppets, but Sesame Street and Fraggle Rock too. You want to talk about Avengers Endgame being the big crossover? Nah. This is the big crossover that we grew up with. Muppet Family Christmas.
All the Jim Henson properties of the time shoved together in a snowy cabin over Christmas.
Even the Muppet Babies are there.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that next week. And that's all we got to talk about for right now. And we will talk to you all again next time. Bye.
Bye. Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic.
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic.
And of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Special thanks to our friend Ian Bonds for being our holiday announcer. Check out his videos on YouTube at Insane Ian or on Bandcamp at insaneian.bandcamp.com. Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.